Allow me to share my screen with you. Okay, now we're talking about a tense that's a little bit more complicated, but remember, I'm not here to explain the tense. I'm not here to tell you when and when not to use the tense. We're just looking at structure. Down the line, believe me, I have a lot of cards that explain the present perfect tense in both Spanish and English. I'm gonna try to get all the perfect tenses in. Now remember, in English, when you see the word perfect, think of the verb to have. To have is an auxiliary verb as well as a main verb. As a main verb, it means to own, to belong to, something belongs to you. But to have is an auxiliary verb that's used in the perfect tenses. So what we're first going to do is first see what it is in English and how it's formulated or structured. And then we're going to do the same thing in Spanish. You already know in Spanish it's going to be more complicated because you already know you have to not worry about, you have to be concerned with, or you have to take in consideration whether the verb ends in an AR, an ER, or IR. You have to already take that into consideration. In English, you don't, because there is no such thing as AR verb, ER verb, IR verb. So in English, you can see here you have the present perfect tense, and it's I, you, we, they, plus, let me get rid of this comma here. This comma should not be here. Okay, I, you, we, they, plus the present tense of the verb to have. Now, the present tense of the verb to have, if you're an English speaker, you should be aware that the verb to have is irregular. It's irregular in the present tense for he, she, and it. For I, you, we, they, it's not irregular. So it's I, you, we, they, the present tense of the verb to have, which is have, plus the past participle. For a regular verb, how many times do I have to say this? For a regular verb, the past participle form is the same form as the past tense. It's the verb, the simple form of the verb plus ed. So I have talked. Nobody says that like that. It's I've talked. Because a lot of times they use the, in English, they use, or we use the contraction for I have is I. It's I apostrophe VE, H apostrophe, they've, THEY apostrophe VE. Okay. And the past tense and the past participle is the same form for regular verbs. So a lot of times you have to, when you see the word talked, you don't know whether you're saying the past tense or you're saying the past participle. You have to use it in some type of context. For he, she, and it, it's the present tense of the verb to have. But the present tense of the verb to have for he, she, and it is not haves. It's not HAVES. It's HAS, has. Has. He has, plus, once again, the past participle of the main verb. So let's look at it. I, you, we, they have already eaten. I have already eaten. Eaten, oh, no, because eaten is irregular. So let me give you a verb. I have already called my mother. I, you, we, they have already called my mother. So you have, the past participle. There you have is interrupted by the adverb already. So if you want to get rid of that, I have called my mother already. And then you have the main verb to call, but in its past participle form, called. Same thing for he. He, she, it has walked to school. Okay, so it's the it is the one that's throwing me off. He, she has walked to school. So it's he has walked to school. She has walked to school. And I guess it being the dog has walked to school. Although don't call anybody's dog it. People will jump on you really quickly. Okay, so that's for the present perfect. For English. Now let's look at it for Spanish. First, you have to take in consideration the endings. For the AR verb, the have or the has is translated into. So when you're talking about the perfect tense, you're talking about the verb haber, haber. And it's almost like English. It's Haber. So where in English you conjugate the verb to have, I have, you have, we have, she has, he has, it has, they have, and we have, okay? In Spanish, you conjugate the present tense of the verb haber, Haber. And here's the present tense. Remember, this is regular now. It's all regular. We haven't even gotten to the irregulars yet. This is all regular. So it's yo, a. Remember, you do not pronounce the H. Tú, has. Él, ella, usted, ha. Nosotros, hemos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes, han. And then you do the past participle of the main verb, whatever the main verb is. As long as it ends, because we're doing AR, as long as it ends in AR. So he hablado, he caminado, has caminado, ha, think of a verb. Can't think, now I can't think of any more AR verbs. So let's just do the verb hablar as an example. He hablado, has hablado, ha hablado, hemos hablado, han hablado. And what you do is to make the hablado, you take off the AR, then you have the simple form of the verb there, and then you attach the ADO. That is the past participle: talked, walked, played, listened. That's a word that ends in AR in English. I mean in Spanish. He escuchado, has escuchado, ha escuchado, hemos escuchado, te ado, han escuchado. Okay. Then you have to say, well, the verb doesn't end in AR that I'm talking about. The verb ends in ER. So let's go down. You still have the same haber, because the haber remains constant, because haber is used in the perfect forms in Spanish, like have is used in the perfect forms in English. So you have the a, the has, the a, the hemos, the an. And then you have the main verb. And we're talking now in Spanish, the verb to eat is regular. So you have comer, you get rid of the air, you get rid of the ER, and it's comido. He comido, has comido, ha comido, hemos comido, han comido. See, once you get used to that you have to be careful of the endings, mindful of the endings, whether it's an AR, ER, IR, and no matter what you do, no matter what verb tense you're talking about, you have to be mindful or aware of the endings. Then you get used to the idea that that is not one rule for all. You get used to it. After a while, it becomes quite normal. Now we're talking about the presente perfecto, but we're now talking about the verbs that end in IR, ER. You still have the a, as, a, hemos, an. That's the haber part. That's I have, you have, we have, they have. He, she, it has. Okay, that's that part. Then we have to look at the main verb has to end in the IR. And we have an example, bibir. So it's a, so we take off the, we take off the IR. We're working with the simple form of the verb, the VIV. So it's a bibido, has bibido, a bibido, hemos bibido, han bibido. Don't forget, I pronounce my V's like bees. I don't say vivido, I say bibido. So that's the present perfect. That's the present perfect tense. Now, like I said, I'm not here to explain, but let's just say the present perfect, past perfect, future perfect, conditional perfect, they are all abstract tenses. Let me see if I can sneak in here the past perfect, because it's not that much different. Past perfect just means the past tense of the verb to have. Like present perfect, hold on, in English means the present tense of the verb to have. And to have is an auxiliary verb, a helper verb, plus the main verb. So let's go down quickly. Now we're talking about the past tense of the verb to have, plus the main verb, whatever that verb is. Okay. But since we're talking about regular verbs, it has to be a regular verb, a verb that follows the rule. So it's this is the past perfect. I had eaten. I had talked. I had walked. I want to say eaten for whatever reason, but I can't because it's irregular. It doesn't end in ed. So it's I, you, we, they, he, she, it, plus the past tense of the verb to have, which is had, plus the past participle of the main verb. Because remember, have is not the main verb. Have is just the auxiliary, the helper verb. Okay, and that's it. I had walked, she had walked, they had walked. But of course, you have to figure out how to use it. But that's a different video. That's it. And basically, that's it for Spanish too. Once again, we have to figure out, is the verb, that the main verb must be AR. Now, the past tense of the verb haber, which is to have in English, as an auxiliary verb, it's había, habías. You see those accents over the I? That's very important. You can't just skip that. Había, habías, había, habíamos, habían. Oh, I see I made a mistake. So we'll put our. There we go. When you're doing things, sometimes you don't see what you're doing. But when you have to become mindful, you see it. Okay, so había, habías, había, habíamos, habían. Okay, so you see it's HABI accent A. Because all of these have accents, because that tells you how to pronounce it. And then the main verb that ends in A, había hablado, getting rid of the AR, HABL, and then adding the ADO, hablado, caminado, trying to think of a regular verb. Well, complicado. Okay, so it's the past tense of the verb haber, and then the main verb hado. That's the inflection. Simple form plus hado. Then for the ER, no problem. Same thing. Ah, and same thing. Ah, that's true. That's true. Había, habías, había, habíamos, habían. Okay. And you have for the ending, it's not an EDO, it's an IDO. So let's look at the verb comer. But in Spanish, because in English it's irregular. It's había comido, habías comido, había comido, habíamos comido, habían comido. Okay, so you are taking the verb comer, you're removing the ER and you're adding the IDO. Okay, and let's look at one more, because we have to look at the IR. Same thing as the ER, but the verb must end in IR versus ER. It's an IR verb, so it's había vivido, habías vivido, había vivido, habíamos vivido, habían vivido. Now remember, I'm pronouncing the V like the B. In Spanish, well, in some versions of Spanish, the B is called the B grande, and the V is called the B chica, which means the big B, and then the V is called the small b. Okay, I'm not going to be able to do the the future perfect and the conditional perfect on this video because it's running a little bit long. I can do it on another video. So remember, we're talking about the perfect tenses. Perfect, when you see the word perfect in English, think of the auxiliary verb to have. Don't be fooled, because to have can be an auxiliary verb as well as a main verb. Just like to do can be an auxiliary and main verb, and the verb to be can be an auxiliary and main verb. Okay, so you have to have that very clear in your mind in English, in English. You have to have that very clear in your mind. Then you're also talking about the past participle of the main verb, the verb that you're talking about. So the past participle of a regular verb is the same form as the past tense of a regular verb, which is the verb without the to ending in ed, or if the verb ends in e, then just d. Talked, walked, played. Okay, that's English. In Spanish, number one, the first thing, you have to be sure it's a regular verb. Second thing, whether the verb ends in AR, ER, IR. Now the have part, the perfect part, is the verb haber, H-A-B-E-R, H-A-B-E-R, H-A-B grande, A-R. Okay? You have to be very careful. All right. Then you have to conjugate that verb. The yo form, había, the to form, habías, the él, ella, usted, había, nosotros, habíamos, ellos, ellas, ustedes, habían. Then you have to worry about, not worry about, but you have to do the main verb, whatever the main verb is. Remember, I'm talking about regular verbs only. If it's the AR verb and you have the verb hablar, you take off the AR, then add the ado. If it's an ER verb, you take off the ER and add the IDO, ido, comido. And if it's an IR verb, you take off the IR and then add the IDO, vivido. Okay, it's running a little bit long, so let me thank you. Let me stop sharing. If you feel that this video is any way helpful, share the video. And let me thank you very much. Bye-bye now.